everyone. This is going to be a quick read-through of an article that's been making the rounds today, and that caught my attention for several reasons. I hope you'll forgive me my brevity in the usual pomp and circumstance with this broadcast, because I have to keep it brief. I have to get back to work here shortly. So I thought we'd get right into it. Also, forgive me any technical issues that might arise, because the San Francisco Chronicle apparently will let me read this article on Firefox, but not on Chrome. I'm having to use Firefox to do the broadcast, which is not usual for me, and the interface is different. So if I make any mistakes, again, it's just the learning curve I have to deal with. But let's discuss this, shall we? Bernie's Mittens, a lesson for San Francisco high school students in subtle white privilege. Are you already salivating as I am? 3 weeks ago, I processed the Capitol insurrection with my high school students. Rallying our inquiry skills, we analyzed the images of that historic day, images of white men storming through the Capitol, fearless and with no forces to stop them. Yeah, aside from a bullet or two. This, I said, is white supremacy. This is white privilege. It can be hard to pinpoint, but when we see it, we know it. Across our Zoom screen, they affirmed with nods, thumbs up, and emojis of anger and frustration. They being, I'm assuming, her high school students. Fast forward 2 weeks as we analyzed images from the inauguration, asking again, what do we see? We saw diversity, creativity, and humanity, and a nation embracing all of this and more. On the day of the inauguration, Bernie Sanders was barely on our radar. The next day, he was everywhere. What do we see? I asked again. We've been studying diversity and discrimination in the United States. My students were ready. Yes, you've trained your activists very well, I am sure. What did they see? They saw a white man in a puffy jacket and huge mittens, distant not only in his social distancing, but in his demeanor and attire. Now, for those of you listening in the future, or who don't have a point of reference for what our speaker here is talking about, and as I try to do this as cleanly as possible, this is the image she's talking about. Okay? Now, I know that most of you have already seen this many times and in many iterations, but all the same, just for the sake of completion, that is what she's talking about. So back to the article, and I'll have to scroll back down again. We took in the meaning of the day, the vulnerability of democracy, the power of ritual, traditions, and the peaceful transition of power. We talked about gender and the possible meanings of the attire chosen by Vice President Kamala Harris, Dr. Jill Biden, the Biden grandchildren, Michelle Obama, Amanda Gorman, and others. Let me back up slightly. We talked about gender and the possible meanings of the attire. Okay. We referenced the female warriors inspiring these women, the colors of their educational degrees, the colors of their educational degrees, and their monochromatic ensembles of pure power. Okay. And there, across all of our news and social media feeds, was Bernie. Bernie memes, Bernie sweatshirts, endless love for Bernie. I puzzled and fumed as an individual as I strove to be my best possible teacher. What did I see? What did I think my students should see? A wealthy, incredibly well-educated and privileged white man showing up for perhaps the most important ritual of the decade in a puffy jacket and huge mittens. Yes, it was quite the insult for an old man to show up outside in Washington, D.C. in late January in a puffy jacket and mittens. You know who else also was there dressed, relatively similarly? Yeah, a whole bunch of people. Here's a kid in a puffy jacket. Here's a lady with gloves on. Here's somebody else in a heavy coat. Here's another guy in a heavy coat. I suppose all these people are, what? Not assured of what the day is? Or they're being disrespectful? Or are they just trying to stay warm on a cold day? Also, as far as demeanor is concerned, I don't know if our author noticed, but Bernie's wearing a mask. I mean, I couldn't tell his demeanor outside of him trying to keep warm on a freezing day. Thank you, Bacall the Driving Ape Man. This sounds like a script to a musical. Well, I do try to instill a little bit of razzmatazz into my readings, but thank you, if that's what you're noticing. Anyway, back to the article, which again I have to switch over in tabs because it's weird. All right. Now here comes the real salient bit of this so far. I mean in no way to overstate the parallels. Senator Sanders is no white supremacist insurrectionist. But he manifests privilege, white privilege, male privilege, and class privilege in ways that my students could see and feel. Quote, when you see privilege, you know it, I'd told them weeks before. Yet when they saw Senator Bernie Sanders manifesting privilege, when seemingly no one else did, I struggled to explain that disparity. I am beyond puzzled as to why so many are loving the images of Bernie and his gloves. Sweet, yes, the gloves, knit by an educator. So, Bernie. Not so sweet? The blindness I see of so many, Bernie included, to the privileges Bernie represents. I don't know many poor or working class or female or struggling to be taken seriously folk who would show up at the inauguration of our 46th president dressed like Bernie, unless those same folk had privilege, which they don't. Yes, who else would show up to the inauguration on the steps of the Capitol building in January weather in Washington, D.C., dressed like that? Oh, just dozens and dozens and God knows how many other people. That's all. That's all. You know. Now, I'm no like huge Bernie bro or anything, but I just love how our author here decides to look for castles in the clouds, and surprisingly enough, she finds them. But on top of that, she's also got her students trained to think exactly as she does. What do you see? No one else is noticing this, but I am. I can see it. I can see it. Now, of course, Bernie's an easy target because, well, he's never held a real job in his entire life. He's a millionaire and so on and so forth. So yes, in comparison to a lot of people in this country, he is very privileged. But apparently the poor, the working class, females, or those struggling to be taken seriously don't have any privilege. Of course, I'd have to ask our author here, well, what if they were white? What if they were white and poor, or white and female, or white and working class, and on and on? Do you think that would make a difference to our speaker? Well, I don't know, but our speaker, by the way, just for reference, our speaker is Ingrid Sire-Ochi, a former UC Berkeley and Mills College professor, ex-Oakland Unified School District principal, and current San Francisco Unified School District high school teacher. And obviously, you can see that every single credential she holds is absolutely invalid. Every single one. She has no authority to speak on anything regarding race, has no authority to speak on anything regarding privilege, and certainly should not be in the position she's in because, well, you know, she's white. Every position she's ever earned, every diploma, every accreditation, every credential, it's all meaningless. It all has to be called into question because she's white. How dare she take up a position of being able to tell anybody else about white privilege? She's the last person who should do that because, well, she's white. Now, do you think our author would be offended if I said something like that to her face? Do you think that she would protest being accused of effectively being a phony because of her skin color? Do you think she'd be in the right to protest such an accusation? I think she would be. I think she would be. I think it's kind of a silly thing to make accusations of someone's character or to make assumptions of someone's legitimacy or whatever else on the basis of things that have nothing to do with their merit. And our author's skin color has nothing to do with her merit. But what does speak to her merit is her interpretation of other people by her own words. And by her own words, well, she's a racist. It's, kind of hard to fathom, I suppose, all things considered, but apparently she knows the content of your character. She knows your value to society. She knows the legitimacy of your place in the world on the basis of your skin color, first and foremost. Oh, and also your gender. That's also important. Also, discerning the meaning of attire that people wear. This is important work to be done in a high school with high school students. But in any case, as I said, I wanted to keep this brief, just a reading, just a brief analysis. I have to get back to work myself. Oh, and as far as this entire broadcast is concerned, as far as everything that I've said, I just want to give a caveat. Don't believe it, because I am white. As always, thank you for listening.